everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Emily and this is the Astral Library, and I have another monthly reading wrap up for you guys because March is well and done. I believe when this video goes out, it is well into April. I believe it's like the end of the first week of April. So it is still, I still have a few days to read if I so choose because it is currently March 28th as I'm recording this. So like theoretically, I could be reading a couple more things. I don't think I will, just because I want a bit of a break before I have to do a lot of intensive reading for April for the Magical Readathon, which you already know my TBR for that. So let's go ahead and close out March with a bang and talk about all the books I read because I somehow read more books than February and I thought I read a lot in February. So we're gonna actually start with the books I read for school. One of is a theory book and one is actually kind of more of a fun book that I definitely would recommend you guys would read. So the first of that is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. Specifically, I read the graphic novel version by Renee Nolt. So this is a book I was teaching in my class and I found that this was a really good way to enjoy the story because I had never read the original novel, The Handmaid's Tale. I've only seen like clips here and there of the TV show. So getting to like actually read what the story was about and kind of the world that Atwood created with Nolt's illustrations was really well done. And these illustrations, let's not get to like a really graphic scene, but like these illustrations are so pretty. I really enjoyed this novel and I found that my students also really liked this and just found it super engaging, whether or not they had read the original novel or this is their first time approaching it. The next book I read for school is a theory book called Ethnic Modernism by Werner Solers, and I really enjoyed this book. This is another book kind of having to do with my dissertation and looking at just like alternative forms of like modernity and like this idea of modernism. And Solers is specifically looking at the different ways that modernism has been adapted and born from more ethnic minorities rather than what we think of the high modernists, like high white modernists like T.S. Eliot or Ezra Pound. This is definitely looking at the works of like Jean Toomer, looking at the like identification of like what is the American identity that is used within these novels, what does it mean to be like have American English and this identifier of American, and just how language and modernism is so heavily based in ethnic minorities and their communities and just how they also contribute to this like grander idea of modernism we have. I found this book really approachable. The chapters were super short and easy to understand, and I think it was just really helpful in terms of what I want to do for my own research. So this is actually a really good one. In fact, I would say this has been one of my favorite theory books I've read for this past quarter, just because a lot of them, while interesting, were just kind of dry, and I felt like Solers was definitely a lot more interesting. Okay, but now for all the fun books. The first fun book I read this month is Gutter Mage by J.S. Kelly. So this is a book I've been like dying to get to. I've wanted to own it for so long. I wanted to read it for so long, but I always didn't want to take the plunge because when this came out, it was like $28, and I've never heard anything by J.S. Kelly. And so I was hesitant to spend that much money on a book I was iffy about. So I put it off until my birthday happened in January, and I decided, you know what, today's the time, and I bought it, and in fact it was 50% off, so I made a good decision to wait. And I decided to read this in March because I was doing a bit of a kind of mood read, just picking up things that sounded interesting to me. And I have to say, I found this world really interesting, and I found the main character to be interesting. But this is a really short fantasy. I think this is something like 300-ish pages, and I only feel like I dipped my toes into this story, and I didn't get everything fully developed in the way I would have liked. So in the story, we are following Roz, who is a self-proclaimed arcanist and specifically not a mage, and she is kind of like a mercenary. So people hire her to go do certain tasks, and with her and her partner, they just kind of like help people around for money, sometimes in exchange for favors, sometimes a barter system. But she's kind of known as the Gutter Mage, who's this like wild, powerful, and kind of a miscreant that, while helpful, will also lead to a lot of destruction. Now, her and her partner are hired by one of the like higher ups of the town. He's super rich, he has a lot of power and influence over mages specifically, and his son has been kidnapped. And he hires Roz and her partner Lysander to go find out what happened to his kid, and to essentially get his kid back. However, they start investigating more and more. They find that not everything is as as it seems. And in fact, who is maybe behind this kidnapping is someone tied to Roz's past, specifically someone who had tortured her in the past and is the reason why she is the way she is today. I found the core crux of this series story to be really, really interesting. I think I'm really excited to see what J.S. Kelly does with that storyline and just like the implications of it. But the story itself in this opening book was a little too fast for my taste. While I was looking for like a shorter read and a little bit more faster pace, I felt like this story needed just to slow down just a tiny bit because we have so many things going on and we're trying to build this whole world that I felt like I was getting whiplash just like all the times I was moving. I also think that for some of the like harder hitting moments between Roz and Lysandra, I would have liked to see a little bit more of the interaction. I felt like we didn't have that fully in this book for me to care about their relationship as much as they try to make me towards the end. I'm definitely interested in seeing more of this series and more of these characters because I think J.S. Kelly created a really interesting world. And again, I really want to know like what is the outcomes to some of the things they had put in this book. So I'm definitely looking forward to more. I don't think we have any like hint at when the next book is coming, but it is going to turn into like a film noir kind of detective mystery PI story, and I'm here for that. Okay, that sounds like a really fun time in like a fantasy world. I think I ended up giving this 3 stars because while I really enjoyed it, I'm wanting more from it. All right, the next couple books I read, also for like that mood reading journey, I read 2 books, part of the same series, and that is the Night Eaters book 1 and 2. So these are by Marjorie Liu and Sana Takata, so Marjorie Liu is the author of Monstrous, and if you love Monstrous, I highly recommend you pick up these books. I gave them both 5 stars, or I may have given book 2 4 stars, but I thoroughly enjoyed both of these books. So in this series, we are following a Chinese American family. Specifically, we are following 2 twin siblings as they're trying to figure out what is going on with their mother, who is having a bit of a harder time communicating with them. And they feel she is overly harsh on everything they do, even though they've successfully created a restaurant and are in other ways just successful people. But their mother never really seems to acknowledge any of that, and in fact is treating them rather coldly, and they don't understand why. At the same time, we're getting hints that there's more of a supernatural element going on, because in the first book we have a house that is for sale across the street from where the family lives that is mysteriously sending everyone running from it. And when you look inside, there's a whole bunch of creepy dolls. So this is definitely a supernatural series that I can't tell you a lot of what's going on because it would just spoil the whole story. This is definitely a story you want to go in blind and just figure out as you go because it's so good. The art is amazing. It's dark, it's creepy, it's gory, but the story itself is so interesting and just captivating and sucks you in. I believe this is my first 5-star read of 2024, so I had so much fun with it. I'm so glad I picked up the first book by a whim, and I loved it so much I immediately bought book 2 to read it and read it as soon as it came in. Like, that is how much I love this series. So I highly recommend it. They're both great reads. And again, I gave them both 5 stars, or maybe the other one dropped a little bit of a star, but not much. It's inconsequential. Go read these books, especially if you are a fan of Monstrous. I feel like this is the same vibes as Monstrous. Definitely a bit more diverse and has a really cool, has a lot of really cool ties to Chinese mythology. So highly recommend it. Go read it. These were so good, and they were very quick reads too. If you're looking for a good graphic novel that's creepy, then you're aching for more Monstrous, this would be good. There's 2 books out, and there's a 3rd one coming out this fall. Okay, a couple more physical books, and then I have a slew of ebooks to talk about. The next book I finished was Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This book has been everywhere on Book Talk, and I'm not gonna lie, I bought this book purely because of the cover, because look at her. She's so pretty. I adore the cover of this book. The content of this book? So Bride follows Misery Lark, who is like a vampire princess, for lack of a better term. She is the daughter of the head council person of the vampire kind of clan, council, community, whatever. And she has lived a quite interesting life. As a child, she was sent to human society to act as collateral, which is a system where the vampires and humans exchange a child that they keep until they're 18 years old, so from like the ages to like 8 to 18, to keep in case, you know, a war breaks out and they kill that child. So they're actual collateral. And Misery was that vampire child who acted as collateral for her childhood and her teens. So she decides to live in the human world with her best friend, Serena. And life is going okay. She has a job, she has her own apartment, and she has Serena. But until one day, she doesn't have Serena anymore. Serena has mysteriously disappeared, and the only thing she could find that gives any hint to where she's at is a single note with the name L.E. Moreland. And who is Moreland? Of course, but the alpha of the werewolf pack, who the vampires are not in a good relationship whatsoever. Or so it's been for a few years, until we have Moreland, who is the new alpha of the werewolves, and he is more open to an alliance between vampires and werewolves, so they stop the killings between them. And how are they going to secure that alliance but through a marriage, to which Misery is both elected and volunteers to be Moreland's wife, so she can find out more of what happened to her friend. So I've never read an Ali Hazelwood book before. I own The Love Hypothesis, which is like her most popular book, and I have been meaning to read it because I just hear her books are just a lot of fun. That they have these like snarky main characters, that the romances are pretty fun, and overall the story's nothing amazing, but they're enjoyable. And I thought, okay, cool. That sounds like it'll be good and fun. And then Bride came out. And then I heard this book was advertised as Omegaverse, which is kind of a racy decision to do in the current romance field. I'm not sure the general populace is ready for an Omegaverse. And then I read this book, and it was okay. I enjoyed the characters Misery and Lo. I thought they had a lot of fun interactions between them. But overall, it was just okay. But what definitely took this book down for me is Ali Hazelwood's writing. I just did not enjoy her writing. I thought it was clunky. I thought the description she made didn't make sense. And it was enough of a problem that it took me out of the story multiple times, where I was reading her description and was being like, what? what does that even mean? Like, that those words don't go together. So that was a bit disappointing. Even though I enjoyed the story for what it was, and I thought the characters were fun, and I thought the romance was okay, I think I would have liked to see a bit more development between them. But overall, it was just an okay book, and I could see why a lot of people would like this book, and why a lot of people are loving this book currently. But I would also like to say that this is not an Omegaverse book. Whoever said and decided to market this as Omegaverse has clearly never read Omegaverse. The only thing that's Omegaverse in this is nodding, which I'm sure freaked a lot of people out and just like, what the hell is that? And they had to do some very, very risky Google searches, hopefully not at work. But that is the only aspect of this that is Omegaverse. Nothing else about this book is Omegaverse, and it's it's fine. And I can see how like someone would market this as Omegaverse just for that one aspect. But overall, this is not an Omegaverse book. Not in the slightest. And that's perfectly fine. I think if someone read in a true Omegaverse book or fanfiction, they might be a little out of their depth, because there's a lot more in Omegaverse than just nodding and these idea of mates. There's usually a whole system involved that revolves around pheromones and behaviors and societal expectations. I feel like all of those combined create the Omegaverse, and I think work really well in the genre when it's done well. This had none of that. This had mates, which was not necessarily an Omegaverse specific thing, and it had nodding, which is Omegaverse usually tied, but again, not enough to like earn that moniker. So I think that was weird, and if that is the one thing that is like holding you back from reading this book, go ahead and read it, babe. This is not Omegaverse. It's not gonna freak you out. It's not squeamish in any way. Nodding is a very, very, very small part towards the end of this book. And it's like a blink and you miss it kind of a thing. So I don't think it's gonna be that big of an issue. If that's what's holding you back, read it. I promise you it won't be that bad. And again, this book was just fun. I will probably keep it in my collection because I love this cover. I think this cover is so gorgeous. And I do think I will try to read The Love Hypothesis, even though I didn't love her writing, because I still had fun despite that. So I think if I try one of her more contemporary fits, I might like it a bit better, especially because I liked how she created her female lead. I think Misery was probably my favorite part of this book, and I think she just like stood out the most rather than all the rest of the characters. Oh, and if I didn't tell you, I ended up giving this book 3 stars. Okay, and the last physical book I read is Guardians by Priest. So this is a Danmei novel and is volume 1 in Guardians, which is Priest, I think, second or third like series. So in this book we are following Zhao Yuan, who is essentially like the head of like the X-Files department. So he is working for a specific subsection of the government that investigates paranormal activities and generally tries to keep the normal population from ever becoming aware of these supernatural occurrences. So Zhao Yuan is currently investigating a gruesome murder that happened on a college campus where a college student was like described as like entrails being ripped out. Like it's a very, very gruesome murder. And as he's investigating, he runs into the Hottie McHottie professor, literally his words, Shen Wei, who seems to know Zhao Yuan in some way and is quite nervous to make eye contact with him. And as they start interacting more and more, running into each other throughout this investigation, they are getting closer and closer, much to Shen Wei's discomfort. But Zhao Yuan is nothing but persistent and is trying to woo Shen Wei because he finds him so hot. This is quite a silly story for how dark the cases are in this book and just like how gruesome some scenes are. And I feel like that Priest does a really good job of balancing those two elements. Because in the other Danmei novel that I read, The Husky and His White Cat Shizun, I really didn't like how Meat Bun handled funny versus dark in that. I feel like it leaned a little too more in the funny side, the hee hee ha ha. Whereas I think Priest does a good job of having these really serious moments be serious and be dark and creepy and tense filled, but also giving us more of that like humor when it's appropriate. I think the balance is better done in this book than it was in Arha. However, the pacing of this book is so slow. Danmei novels are like typically pretty slow to get into. Like it just goes with the genre. The volume 1s are usually a lot of world building, a lot of exposition, a lot of like figuring out who these characters are and like what's going on, and this is no exception. It takes a while for the story really to kick off. And I found myself definitely dragging through this book. I ended up putting it down multiple times until I was done with it, but I still enjoyed it, and I still am really interested in seeing how this world and story is going to go, especially how the relationship between the two main characters is going to develop further. I think there's a lot of room for fun dynamics between them, and I think the interactions we did get to see between Zhao Yuan and Shen Wei was really cute and really funny and really sweet. So I'm excited to see how that develops more. And book 2 is already out, so I need to go pick that up. And I'm hoping that one's a little bit more faster paced just because this one took a while to get through, as again kind of goes with the genre of the book. So I ended up giving this 3 stars just because I felt it was a little too slow even for the genre. I'm definitely interested in continuing more of this series. Okay, the next segment of books I have for you are all ebooks and all books I read for a dark romance reading vlog I did that you can see the video here. It's posted already, you can go check it out. It is me reading. It has all my thoughts on these books, so I'm not gonna spend too much time here explaining my thoughts on them and kind of like what they are about. You can go check out that vlog. So the first book I read for that vlog is Vicious by LJ Shen, which is a bully romance story. I had a lot of fun with this. The Vicious, the male love interest, is just like my kind of like toxic man. He's everything I would hate in real life, but in a book form, I love him. He was so much fun, and I feel like there was a really intense spark between the two love interests, and I felt like that kind of made the book a lot of fun to read and really engaging and to kind of like speed through. The next book I read for this was my favorite of that whole vlog, and that is Saint by Sierra Simone, which is the 3rd book in the Priest series. And oh my god, this was everything I needed for my dark romance, because it is a forbidden romance between a monk and his ex-boyfriend, and oh my god, this was juicy. This was so juicy. It was just so well paced, and there was so much angst and pining, and the sex was good, and I was just, oh my god. Everything about this book was so much fun, and it was so intense and like had me gripped to the book itself. I could not put that book down. I could not put it down. I loved it so much. I sped through it, and even though it was the longest book of the entire vlog, I think almost 400 something pages, I still devoured it as quick as these shorter books. Highly recommend that book. Highly recommend it. It's definitely opened me up to reading more of Sierra Simone and like dark romance in general. I think like if I could find more books like Priest, I think I could definitely see myself reading more and more dark romance. The next book I had read was Savage Lover by Sophie Lark. This is the book I hated the most. I thought there was no chemistry between the main characters. I thought it was just kind of cringy at times. And the only thing that saved this book, I think I ended up giving it 2 stars, was the fact that it had these like Fast and Furious vibes, which is entirely what Baron from the book Baron proposed this book as and like said that it was about. She was 100% right. There's like so much Fast and Furious vibes. And little known fact about me, I am like feral for Fast and Furious. I love it so much. Don't ask me why. They're objectively bad and I know that. That is the only thing that saved this book. I was reading for the plot more than I was reading for the romance, which I feel is like a bad thing when you're a romance book. If I don't like your romance, why am I reading you as a romance book? It did make it make sense. And the final book I read for that vlog is Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. This one I enjoyed. I found the main character to be really annoying at times and downright insufferable, especially at the beginning of the book where she just had this like pick me, not like other girls energy. Very, very cringy and just kind of like, why are you like this girl? Like we're over this not like other girls girl. But I really, really loved her love interest, Dean. I feel like he was a really well done male love interest who showed like the actual effects of trauma happening on him and how he's coping with it and how he's not coping with it. I think my only critique for this book was I wished it was a little longer so we got a bit more development between some of our characters. Like Dean is married to our main character's sister and that's a lot of tension that goes on between them. And I would have liked to see his relationship more with her sister because I feel like when we get these big emotional moments towards the last half of the book between them, they would have hit a little harder if I knew what how the relationship actually was, other than they were supposed to get married and that they've been together for so long. Like, let me see a little bit more so I like can feel Dean hurting in the situation. But other than that, I think I again had a lot of fun with this book. I thought it was really well done. I thought it was paced well. I thought the characters had really good connection between each other and that the kind of like wacky element, which was they were both like captured by the serial killer, was super fascinating, super well done, and I think had a lot of lasting impacts. It wasn't just like, okay, they were rescued and everything's fine now. Like, we actually dealt with the trauma that came from that experience and the lingering effects of that trauma and how they individually have to heal before they can come together to heal and be together. That was all really well done. The main character is probably the biggest turnoff about that book. I still ended up giving it 4 stars and I stick by that because I really enjoyed it and I think it was well done. But that character, I could see how she would turn a lot of people off from this book, especially the opening sections where she's just damn near insufferable. I thought I was going to hate the book by reading those first like 1 or 2 chapters. I thought like this book's not gonna be for me. It's gonna be another flop. Was not the case. Really ended up enjoying it. Really glad I stuck through it and read to the end. All right, but that is all 11 books that I read for March. I got so much more reading done this month and it felt nice. It felt nice just to like sit and mood read for a bit as well as to do this challenge where I was reading out of my usual genres. I felt like this is a great reading month. Even though not every book was a 5-star and that not every book was amazing, I feel like what I read this month was just a lot of fun. And that's what you need every now and again. You don't need every book to be a 5-star. You just need some books to be fun. And that was my March. It was a fun reading month. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, consider leaving a thumbs up and a comment down below. Let me know, what was your favorite book that you read this month? What did you enjoy? Or alternatively, what book did you hate this month? Why did you hate it? Did you DNF it? Did you finish it? Tell me the tea. But that's it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and I will see you in the next one. Bye!